Hanging out with you awesome people at DroidCon San Francisco the last couple days here at the Fort Mason Center, and I've realized a universal truth about myself, that I'm not that smart. You guys, intellectually, are at like a whole nother plane. I don't know if it's San Francisco, I don't know what it is, but it's incredible, and it underscores the veracity of my talk title, which is, I retrofitted my car with Android Auto, and you can too. If I'm not that smart, you guys can definitely pick up on this. Now, this particular picture of my disemboweled Subaru makes me very nervous. It's like nightmare fuel. I don't know if I'm going to be able to put it back together, so I'm going to change this title slide to something a little more befitting of our slot right here. You guys have made it. You're at the very last session, the headlining session of DroidCon San Francisco. You've been through all the opening acts, Romain Guy, Chet Haas, Kelly Schuster, Dave Smith, Dan Liu. You've made it through them and you've gotten to here, 4:20 p.m., Friday, the day after St. Patrick's Day. And we're going to have a good time in this talk. So when an early version of this talk leaked online last week, and the DroidCon SF organizers heard that I wasn't that smart and they were concerned. So they put me in mandatory speaker training. I see a bunch of speakers in the audience. You guys didn't have to go to that. That's because you're, smarter. And I assured them that, I've talked in Hong Kong and Paris, Los Angeles, Boston, all over the world. I probably know what I'm doing, but I'm never against a little training. And here were some of the takeaways from that mandatory speaker training. One, they're really into bubbles at DroidCon SF. They want you drinking, as a speaker, if you've seen the speaker lounge, champagne or Prosecco before, during, and after every talk. I've never seen it before, but it's original to DroidCon San Francisco. Now, two, they told me, and this is why I have this slide, that you need to have structure to your talk. You can't just get up and tell an amazing story for 40 minutes, which I had planned to do. They said, you need to tell the audience what's going to happen. You need to give them buckets that you can talk into. So these are our buckets we're going to go through today. Like any good story, there's going to be a problem. We're going to find a solution. We're going to get weird. We're going to get awesome. We're going to get distracted. And then we're going to talk about some code. Now, the last thing I remember from speaker training was kind of like a stretch goal. They were like, really good speakers are able to connect with the audience and build a sense of anticipation. All right, so we got that. All right, so I'm going to tell a story. Any good story needs a villain, it needs a problem. And here's the problem I have. Does anybody here have an original G1? Raise your hand, loud and proud. Awesome. All right, all you guys are way cooler than me, because I got into this Android game around Android Cupcake time, and my first device was a Motorola Click. I still have it. I love it. It's possibly hermetically sealed in a glass case in my living room, possibly like your G1s. And every year I've gotten a new Android device, another phone, and eventually they started having tablets. So I have a small tablet, I have a large tablet, I have a black tablet, I have a white tablet. Pretty soon, that wasn't enough. This problem was continuing. I went to Google I/O one year, and there was a way to put Android on your face. And I was like, sign me up. I was the 177th Google Glass Explorer. I couldn't get enough of Android. Let's get it on my face. That opened up a whole new world of wearables. There are watches. I have several different Android watches. I have the original Google TV that I still use today. I have Android TV. I have a lot of Android devices. So what you guys are probably thinking the problem is that I have too much Android. But quite the opposite. The problem is that I don't have enough Android. I need even more Android. And so I racked my brain earlier this year, and you guys really have to pay attention because this is about to go non-linear. This is January 2016, and I had to figure out where can I get more Android. And so I did what anybody would do, and I got into my time-traveling DeLorean, and went to South by Southwest last week and watched a talk about self-driving cars from Google. And from this talk, I realized that Americans, I'm an American, we drive a lot. 6 billion minutes every single day people are commuting. And I was like, awesome. So I came back to January 2016, and I thought, I'm going to get Android Auto. Let's do this. So, like any self-respecting American, I went to the biggest mall I could find in Colorado, and so I wanted Android Auto. And here we are in Colorado. I'm from Colorado. And when you tell somebody you're from Colorado and San Francisco, really anywhere in the world, there's only one thing they want to talk about. And the question people always ask me, Mark, is it true? Are the streets paved with marijuana in Denver, Colorado? To which I say, kind of they are. Last year we had $125 million in sales tax revenue from legal marijuana sales. So when I see hardworking construction workers repairing potholes and building new freeways, I think, great that my hard-earned tax dollars aren't going towards that, and it's some tourist or local stoner that's funding that work. The other thing people like to ask me about Colorado, is it true, does everybody in Colorado have a more expensive bike than they do a car? And we're about to meet my cars in a second. And it kind of is true. It's not true for everybody in Colorado, but if you looked at my garage, you would see way more value in outdoors equipment between telemark skis, split boards. I have a different snowboard for moguls, powder, or groomer days. I have 2 different mountain bikes. One's a 29er that's worth more than one of my cars. The other one I use for camping trips, and I can load up with a week's worth of supplies and just go off into the mountains. We take our outdoor stuff very seriously. And so that gets me to my cars. So I've been around a while. I'm a little older. There are a lot of young faces in this crowd. Just a little bit of advice. Live beneath your means. I've been living beneath my means since before the dot-com boom. It's a good way to go. So this is my Subaru up on Independence Pass. This thing has 130,000 miles on it. It's, you know, it's nothing flashy. You don't need a flashy car to get by. And this is my Jeep. This Jeep Wrangler doesn't have air conditioning, doesn't have power windows. It barely heats in the winter, which will come in later. We'll get to that. And so anyways, and a quick note about these pictures. The previous picture was up on Independence Pass by Aspen. It's beautiful driving around there. This is up on, if you've ever been to Vail and gone snowboarding or skiing, it's right on top of China Bowl. So I drove up here one day to watch the sunrise and take photos with my dad. And so here's a picture of my dad. Why do I have a slide of my dad? Because I love my dad. Awesome. Love my mama bear too. So, like any self-respecting American, I needed to solve this problem and get some Android Auto. So I went to the biggest shopping mall I could find. And I went to, and to protect the guilty in this case, we'll just call it Speaker City. I went to my local Speaker City, and right away, things did not go well. I walk in, I say, hey, I'm interested in Android Auto. They're like, great, let me give you a demo. They don't know how to demo it. First off, none of the salespeople had Android devices. There are like 8 people, tons of pomade, neatly groomed, beautiful polos, all iPhones, every single one of them. This is when you guys go, boo. All iPhones, every single one of them. Awesome. Okay, so they get some scraggly kid from the back. He's an installer getting 10 bucks an hour, but being pimped out at like 100 bucks an hour, and they borrow his Android device. Now, the smart ones in the crowd are wondering, well, didn't you have your Android phone, Mark? And yeah, I did have my Android phone, but they had never even heard of USB-C before, and certainly didn't have a cable that could support it. So we get the Android device, and the salesman, very slick, wants to sell me the most expensive, top-of-the-line, Pioneer 8100 NEX. And if he knew anything about the Android Auto hardware, we would have had a conversation like this. He would have said, I want to put you into the most deluxe Android Auto system there is. And I would say, well, tell me about some of its features. And he would say, well, for one thing, it has a capacitive screen instead of the resistive screen that the cheaper devices have. To which I would think, well, one of my cars barely has heat, and I have to wear gloves to drive it in the winter, so I want a resistive screen. He would have followed up by saying, this more expensive model has onboard GPS. To which I would have said, well, I have to plug in my Android phone anyways. My Android phone has GPS, and the only way to use the onboard GPS is some weird OEM mapping system that isn't Google Maps, so I'm not going to use that anyways. And then he would have said, it also has this awesome feature that the faceplate does not come off. And we'll get to dangerous parts of cities a little bit later in this talk, but if you put something nice into maybe not the nicest car, you probably want a detachable faceplate. So if we could have had that conversation, I probably would have talked him down to a less expensive system, which they don't even sell there. So let's summarize my Speaker City experience. There were only iPhones in the store. They were bewildered by USB-C. They tried to push a fancier head unit, and the damage was more than $2,000 after taxes. Now you remember I like to live beneath my means. Maybe I could afford $2,000. I'm old enough to remember when like computers cost like $4,000. That used to be a thing. So maybe I do that, but I really wanted to, I'm trying to add a device to this. I got to get a bigger house because I have so many Android devices at home now. So I'm trying to get something that's within the realm of a device I might purchase. So I'm a big reader too, and I read this awesome book, and I'm thinking, hey, $2,000 is too much money, but I'm kind of a tinkerer, I'm kind of a hacker. We got a kegerator at work, and me and a coworker, Josh, put together this system where we got these European flow sensors, and we put them on the keg lines. We hooked everything up to a Raspberry Pi and a visualizer on some Android tablets to measure how much beer was left in the kegs so people would know when to change them. We called it Keg Brains. I've been on a bunch of hackathon teams. We've been all over the world competing and taken in more than $30,000 in cash prizes. Like, I know how to work around things. So I thought to myself, I'm going to have to science the shit out of this to figure out how to get a reasonable price for Android Auto. So when you attack a problem, you want to look at the fulcrum, the thing where you can apply the most leverage, right? The biggest problem. And for me, that was the installer. If I could crack the code of a better installer, I'd be able to probably solve this problem of a more thrifty Android Auto installation. So this is a picture of me working at the installer one day when I went over to get my device installed. Those of you with young, good eyes might see prison bars reflected in my MacBook. And I'm not suggesting that you get your Android Auto installed by prison labor, although that would undoubtedly be cheaper than even what I was able to do. But if you are able to find a place in, let's say, a pre-gentrification area of your friendly city where the proprietor needs prison bars on the windows to sleep at night, his commercial lease expenses are probably a lot lower than Speaker City, and he's probably going to pass those savings on to you and also be really cool at the same time. And that was my experience with AT Audio and the gentleman who helped me out. So after I figured out the installer, I went to him and I said, hey, how much to get Android Auto installed in my car? And he was able to give me a quote of $1,300. So we're already working in the right direction, but we're not quite in that like sub 1,000, like what a Nexus 6P retail would have cost last year. So the head unit is the most expensive part. And I previously explained the differences between the 8100 NEX and the 4100 NEX and Pioneer, which are not the only head units available, but they're the most common. So first I decided to use the 4100 NEX, which is $700 retail. So there's savings right there. But we're sciencing this. So I found the same head unit, I have no idea where it came from, on eBay for $489. There's another $200+ in savings. And keep in mind that this is January 2016. If you're watching this online after this video goes viral, keep in mind that this is from January of 2016. The prices have actually dropped quite a bit. I was looking at them recently. You can do even better than I did in the prices I'm going to show you. So I basically went to the installer and I said, look, all right, $1,300, can you send me an invoice? Would you be open to this? And give me all the parts you're going to purchase and your installation price. And basically, I'm going to go out and buy the parts, I'll drive them to you, and then you just charge me for the installation. The guy was like, super, I will totally do that. And he sent me this email. And I don't know how big the screen is, but I'll just read off a couple of these things. There's a dash kit. It's basically the silver thing that goes around the radio. There's a wire harness, an antenna adapter, steering wheel control interface, and a USB extension with bracket. And there's actually a couple other extensions that we'll get into in a second. But this is kind of like the basic install. And so I went out on the internet, eBay, Amazon, Prime is amazing, and had all this stuff shipped to me for basically half of what it would have cost at the Prison Bar installer, and like a tenth maybe of what it would have cost at Speaker City. So let's look at the final numbers. So I got the install done for 150 bucks instead of $400. I got the parts, the small parts, for $100 instead of $200. I got the head unit, the 4100 NEX, for $489 instead of the $1,400 retail 8100 NEX, which has the advantages of it has a resistive screen instead of capacitive, which is like inverse of what you would normally think. It's actually better. Pinch zoom works great on it. Everything is great about it. It has a detachable faceplate, and it doesn't have onboard GPS, but you don't need onboard GPS anyways. So my total was $739 to get this installed. Nexus 6P back in December was $649. So we're basically at that price. If you're going out, if you're anything like me and you're buying Android devices with regularity, this is like in your sweet spot. So now, some of you are probably thinking, what a wuss. Like, why did he go to an installer? Why didn't he just like get some screwdrivers out and make this happen? So let's look at some pictures of how they earn their $150, which I'm very happy to have spent knowing what my time is worth. So this is a shot inside their shop. This is, they're just about to pry the radio out here. You can see that it's inset a little bit in the faceplate. It's actually the opposite. The radio is fixed, the faceplate is starting to come off. Here we can see one of these scary disemboweled Subaru shots. Another one where they've completely removed most of my car at this point, and it gets worse. Now they're taking apart the transmission, which I wouldn't have even thought of. You have to run wires through there if you want it to look pretty. And here's the back of the ARM console. So I'm hoping that all of you are going to run out and do this over the next weeks and months, and hopefully you'll tweet me pictures of your car in exotic and beautiful locations with Android Auto in it. Let's talk about here's an exterior shot, more prison bars, etc. Let's talk about some things you should ask at your local installer. First off, these head units have 2 USB ports. If you go to Speaker City, you're not going to learn any of this. They're going to tell you, hey, you want Android Auto? Great. We're going to wire up 1 USB port. You're going to plug in your phone and you're done. But what if I have an iPhone. I develop iOS stuff too. I have friends who have iPhones. What if I want to use Apple CarPlay? All these head units do both. They do Android Auto and they do Apple CarPlay. But I would not have known this. The same USB port doesn't work. You can't connect to your iPhone into the USB port for Android and have CarPlay work. So you want the second one wired up. The way I did this was I have the real pretty female USB right next to my arm, in the ARM box. And then I run the Apple CarPlay USB into the glove box. So when friends are driving, they want to listen to their music, they can plug in there. Ask for an HDMI female port as well. So I have this in my glove box. I didn't really realize this. That Jeep you saw earlier originally didn't even have a CD player. It had a tape deck in it. That's how old it is. So I'm not like up on how these fancy radios work, but this thing has a DVD player. You can watch movies on it. I plugged in Spaceballs the other day, and it's pretty sweet. It's like in your living room, it's kind of like here. The acoustics maybe aren't the best in the world, but in your car, you are in a very enclosed space, and even if you don't have the greatest stereo system in the world, it feels like you're in a THX movie theater. It's unbelievable. The screen quality, though, it's like 480p, so we're pretty spoiled by the high quality of our Android devices. The TV isn't great, but get HDMI. Who knows? Maybe you'll plug in a Blu-ray player someday. But more likely, you can put your Chromecast into your glove box, and I've done this. I have a Chromecast in my glove box. It's a little tricky. You do need a second phone. You need to set up a hotspot on one phone, because both your phone and the Chromecast need to be on the same Wi-Fi network. So the setup's a little tricky. You can throw away that. I use an iPhone in this case, and I threw it away immediately afterwards. You can get rid of the iPhone when you're done, and then you have anything that you would want on a Chromecast. So here's Chromecast. Chromecast Mark is the name of it, running on my Android Auto in my Subaru. And there's Netflix. You can watch Netflix. Now, obviously, you don't want to do this while driving, and we're going to talk about safe driving a little bit later. But when you're parked and stationary, like, what if you're, I don't know, at somebody's doctor appointment and you have to wait an hour? Why not bang through some episodes of whatever you like to watch on Netflix? House of Cards, let's say. All right. So, now, while I was putting together these slides for this talk the last couple days, I found that you can go even cheaper than I went. There are like non-branded Chinese knockoff head units that you can buy. And like, let's look at this top one here, $170. And it comes with a rear view camera. So I really want somebody in the audience to try this and to tweet at me and let me know like if it worked or if your car caught on fire. I'm not necessarily endorsing that. Okay, so let's say you're like me and you get Android Auto, you science the heck out of it, and now you're supposed to give a talk and you want to show people how it's going to work. This is what I did. You can buy basically a shower rod that's very small, like an 8 to 11 inch tension rod. You can get a plumbing clamp, which is pictured there. It's just like the one that Olivia Pope used in Scandal to escape prison, if you remember that scene. And you need a selfie stick that you can destroy, which is basically all of them. You basically rip off the part that's got the spring-loaded phone holder, and with a 1/4 inch bolt, you put the whole thing together, and you end up with video like this. And so hopefully we're going to be able to hear this. This is going to be me experimenting with the knowledge graph that Google puts into your car when you get Android Auto. What is the square root of pi?
Not sure how to help with what is the square root of pi. For tips on what you can say, turn on the microphone and say, help.
Help.
Here are a few examples of what you can ask Google to do for you. After opening the microphone, you can say, what is my next turn, or find restaurants.
What is the capital of Delaware?
The capital of Delaware is Dover.
All right, so if you want to film Android, I don't know, there's some videos online that Google made. I'm assuming they spent a lot of money on filming those. My system costs less than $5. All right, now let's get weird. Now here we have a picture of the awesome place I work in Denver, where we help people live healthier lives, and we have a flagship app that has 7 million plus Play Store downloads. It's pretty sweet. We like to have fun, and we like to pair program too. So here we see a hot dog and a lobster pair programming, and the pickle is really getting a kick out of what's going on. So let's get weird. Let's talk about what maybe isn't awesome about Android Auto after I've been using it since mid-late January, a couple months. This is the #1 most annoying thing about Android Auto. And so when this video does go viral and the team, I'm assuming there's like one person half-time working on Android Auto at Google, because that's how they do things. If you could spend some of that time fixing this problem, it would be great. When you plug in your phone, 20% of the time you get this message. Android Auto cannot connect right now. When it's safe to do so, please check your Android phone. So you unplug the phone, you plug it back in, And I've gone as many as 7, 8, 9 times in a row getting that message before it will finally connect and work. And I think it's actually not Android Auto's fault. I think it's the phone itself. Like we heard in the keynote the other day about apps just, you know, the kernel thrashing because of intents and apps not behaving well. Maybe it's something to do with that. But if you search Reddit, and you'll see this problem is pretty much universal across all the head units and different kinds of devices. So that's a little weird and could be improved in the future. So let's say I say a command, like in this case I hit the little button, I said play Airborne Toxic Event. Sounds reasonable, you're playing an artist. Well, there's a sorting algorithm fail. It returns the playlist alphabetically. So in this case, Airborne Toxic Event has changing on multiple albums, but it doesn't know that, and it's just going to play changing 1, 2, 3 times in a row for you, which is really annoying. So then it's 2016, right? There's Bluetooth, right? Like, why are we plugging in to the phone? So surely they'll fix that in the future, but that's definitely something that's weird and could be improved upon. Some other small things. Blown surprises. Thanks, AutoAndroid. Let's say a friend of yours is really into handmade kites, and you go to your local handmade kite emporium and you ask for directions. Next time you're in the car with that friend, guess what Google Now card is going to be showing? It's 12 minutes to your local handmade kite emporium, and the surprise is blown. When you say play Airborne Toxic Event, if you'd been listening to a podcast previously, it will just play the podcast that sounds most like Airborne Toxic Event, which leads to some hilarity. It doesn't really get, that's just kind of confusing. You can only have like the most recent audio app is what it's going to get its instructions from. Blaring context switches. I don't know if this is universal to Android Auto, but if I unplug my phone occasionally, just for like 1/100th of a second, but long enough to scare the bejesus out of you, the song that was playing will play at 3 times the volume it was previously playing, and then just stop completely. So that's a little unsettling. And then let's say I was talking about maybe watching some Netflix in your car. If you're stopped and you're just in the forward 1 position, and then you start the car from there, it power cycles the whole Android Auto system. So that's kind of a subtle thing. All right. Android Auto is also super awesome. I love it. I'm glad that I scienced this, that I got this into my car. And here are some things I love about it. I can ask the price of a Bitcoin. We'll do that hopefully in a little minute. You get the full power of the knowledge graph. It's got a great interface to music stuff. Podcasts are awesome. I use Pocket Cast. I mentioned the searching kind of weirdness. All your messages, you can hear them, you can reply to them. This is my KegBrains co-conspirator, Josh. The map experience is amazing. It's great. Like, I didn't actually know that Android Auto was multi-touch until I was like driving on the highway one day and just tried to pinch zoom, and it worked. And I was kind of shocked that it did. The panning maps, if you use Google Glass, and you remember how awesome it was that the maps knew which direction you were facing and would like readjust as you were walking around curves, Android Auto does the same thing. It's really great. So I'm cutting this a little tight on time, so I'm going to speed through this distraction thing, but I do want to make an important point that if you get this installed, like, be careful out there, be safe, don't text and drive. It's very easy to still use your phone. Like all you have to do is hit the recent apps button, and you can use your phone, you can operate your phone while Android Auto is engaged, even though it discourages you from doing so. But that doesn't mean you should. And there's this like huge argument on the internet about this 6 clicks rule. Basically, if you go 6 clicks deep into any Android Auto experience, you get this message, which says, can't show more items for safety reasons. And a lot of people, what they do driving 60 miles an hour is unplug their, let's say you're trying to find some obscure David Bowie track. You unplug your phone, you go to find the track, you get it playing, and you plug your phone back in. That's not safe. But a lot of people say, well, when I'm stopped at a traffic light, why can't I do that same thing? To which I went out and did a lot of research, read all these papers, really fascinating how people study this stuff, about driver distraction. So I'll fly through this real quick. Basically, this team from Utah did a big study, bunch of men and women. They put them through 3 different exercises. They had to do 1, not driving at all, sitting at a desk. 1, driving a simulator. 1, driving a car. They gave them like 8 different tasks. Anything from holding a conversation, listening to the radio, listening to an audiobook, sending a text message by voice-to-computer interaction, and the last one was a very complicated math and memory problem, which was like the highest mental distraction level. And then they used a bunch of different ways to measure people's attention. So in one of them, I think I have a picture here of this guy. There's basically like a little thing floated in front of his face. Every once in a while, it will show a green or red light. And you have a little button on your left hand, and when it shows green, you have to hit the button. And when it shows red, you don't hit the button. And they measure the time. And what they found is that if you do these tasks, your reaction time for the next 27 seconds is diminished. So like if you stopped at a traffic light, you send a text message, for the next 27 seconds, your reaction time to a biker flying into your lane is diminished. So be careful out there. Business stuff, let's fly through that. All right, we all love to code. We all like to win big checks. Let's do a live demo. All right. Okay, we're going to plug in my phone. You know what? I just realized I didn't start the screen recording. We're going to start that. Why not? All right, let's see if you guys can see my phone. Okay, awesome. Okay, let's go into Android Auto. And like any good, I'm clicking on the Android Auto. Actually, if I do it here, you'll be able to see it. Eventually, it's going to put me into developer mode, which gives me options up here. Start the server. Forward a port. Hope that this works. Boom. All right, we're going to push our luck now. So this is the absolute cheapest way to get Android Auto. Here's the entire Android Auto experience right here. Let's see. What's the price of a Bitcoin?
1 BTC equals 409 United States dollars and 73 cents. Google can't guarantee the accuracy of these exchange rates.
Okay, and we can do fun things like change it from day to night mode. It's kind of subtle there. The day was also purple in that view. And so, okay, so that's good. There's a little demo. All right, sweet. So here's some notes. I'll publish the slides later, and you guys can see these. All right, so let's talk about coding and what you can do. Navigation is probably coming soon. There's no automotive app tag yet. You can definitely do media. To do media, you define a service that provides audio track listing information extending media browser service. To do messaging, you use the automotive app notification. You build an unheard conversation notification. You associate it with a car extender object for Android Auto to handle, and replies are managed with intents that you have to handle in your code. So, interesting thing about adding Android Auto to your app is that it goes into the same APK that you use for Android TV or your phone, etc. You do have to set your target SDK version to 21 or higher. If you're going to do messaging, you need to add the V4 support library with notification compat car extender. You specify the car capabilities that your app is capable of in an XML file in your project's resource directory, and you add a manifest entry that references that capabilities file. Then you add some code to add the features to your app, like handling the intents that I mentioned previously. You submit to the Play Store, and kind of like Google Glassware, you wait for manual approval. And if you get rejected, it's going to get sent to your developer email. And if the auto component does not meet the design guidelines, which include some of the safety stuff I talked about, your entire APK update will be rejected. So I am Mark. Let's wrap this thing up. So I work for, this is funny, we're rebranding our company, and so I was advised not to say the name of my company, which is weird. But I work in an awesome company. We help people live healthier lives. For like almost 20 years, you've been able to find me at digitalconstruction.com. That will continue for a long time. You can find me on GitHub there. I really do want people to tweet me if they set up Android Auto. I'd love to hear your tips, things that you like, things that are weird for you. And a quick shout out to a Colorado superhero standing next to Olympic silver medalist Gretchen Bleiler there. Both of us are interested in curing cancer, doing things that that promote research into cancer. And so on April 2nd, 2016, there's this event called Pink Veil. It's the largest snow event to conquer cancer in the world, and you can find more info at that URL. And that's the end. Thank you for coming, guys. Looks like we got 2.5 minutes for questions if anybody has one. All right, perfect. Let's go drink.